Welcome to the Beau Show. I think one of the great responsibilities of an honest press is to expose hypocrisy by leaders of this country, or any country for that matter. It's important to keep our leaders honest and transparent. The COVID-19 pandemic has perhaps exposed some of the greatest hypocrisies, as many times chaos and strife can expose poor leadership and governance. And while many elements of this pandemic have been politicized, some things are not political at all. It's like what the founders once wrote: "We hold these truths to be self-evident." That means that no one needed to subjectively evaluate the truths. They were self-evident. All men are created equal. But in Washington, D.C., the capital of our nation and the capital of hypocrisy, we see an awful lot of do as I say, but not as I do. We saw this with Gavin Newsom and his big soiree at the French Laundry while the entire state was under limited gatherings. And we saw it with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi when she went for a maskless hair appointment in San Francisco while the state forbade indoor service back in September of 2020. She went on Stephen Colbert's show, another Democrat lackey, in April of 2020 as COVID began to rage to talk about the designer ice cream brand she keeps in her $25,000 freezer. And I want to focus on Pelosi because she has been the queen of hypocrisy in so many ways. She was the Democrats' leader all throughout the Trump presidency, and she continues to be the congressional leader in the Biden administration. She has had ample time in Congress and represents the state of California, a state so fallen from grace and grandeur. To connect the dots, California Governor Gavin Newsom is related by marriage to her. Talk about nepotism and inside baseball. Pelosi presided over the Russia investigation into Donald Trump and the impeachment proceedings. She instigated the January 6th commission, even when the FBI found paltry or no evidence of insurrection. Do you all know this? According to Reuters, the FBI found scant evidence of an organized insurrection to overthrow the government and overturn the presidential election as of August 20th. There was no Alex Jones or Roger Stone organized plot or anything of that nature. But Pelosi was happy to proceed, just as she did with the Russia hoax that turned up nothing, as well as the impeachment in the House. And she did so with great satisfaction too. But judging by the fact that a recent felon was found passed out in his car with 300 stolen California recall voting ballots, the truth of election engineering and malfeasance may still be yet to be told. Well, we know Nancy loves the camera. She loves the press. She loves hearing herself speak. She's a classic spin artist and a classic DC politician. The reason that people have little faith in our Congress. In spite of her conviction, she comes across as disingenuous. And throughout this pandemic, we have heard her preach about masks and lockdowns. And we know that California was one of the strictest places for this, in spite of some very bad COVID numbers, especially in Los Angeles. Her state is riddled with homelessness, crime, high taxes, regulations, and just poor living. Then this past week, she spoke at a high-profile Democrat fundraiser out in Napa Valley. The tickets went all the way up to $29,000 per head. Must be nice. This was a Democratic DCCC fundraiser, a group that has the sole goal of maintaining Democratic control of the House, which is now very much in jeopardy after a rocky Biden presidency that has led to complete failure in Afghanistan. A video emerged of Pelosi speaking at this snazzy event where guests can be seen totally maskless, shoulder to shoulder at tables. Take a look.
That's what we have in store for later. But for now, a question was asked this morning by Ambassador Solomon about young people and how we were reaching out to young people in the election. Well, young people, we always ask them, how do you want to be reached out to? And one of the main responses...
However, if you notice, all the service staff had masks on. Isn't that interesting? You don't think your guests need masks, but the help? Yeah, we better make sure they're all masked up. And the crowd? Your old rich white crowd, not the diversity that Pelosi preaches about. She knows where her bread is buttered. She'd do anything to protect the House and her speaker's gavel. This is all happening while we see the worst conditions in Afghanistan in 20 years, as Biden, Pelosi, and company give the country away to the Taliban. Biden admitted that at least 7 people have died already by being trampled or crushed to death, including a 2-year-old. U.S. citizens and allies are trying to get to the airport, but are being attacked by the Taliban. And even worse, ISIS is now a legitimate threat there. There are fears of suicide bombers, which can naturally be expected from the past conduct of ISIS. The same day as this lavish Napa Valley fundraiser Pelosi was at, the embassy in Kabul sent a wire saying that they are deeply disheartened, and some expect to die with dignity there, since the chaos at the airport is so high. This is a colossal failure of leadership. Doesn't this remind you a little bit of the Benghazi nightmare with Hillary Clinton? People at the embassy begging for support on the anniversary of 9/11, and our State Department doing absolutely nothing? And we lost 4 people, including our ambassador. That's what poor leadership does. I watched Republicans, many of whom served previously in Afghanistan, noticeably angry that our leaders had failed the country and the citizens that had been left behind, especially with this August 31st withdrawal deadline. Take a listen to their palpable anger.
We're going to leave Americans behind 11 days before the 20th anniversary of September 11th? Are you kidding me? Is that what's really happening right down the street on Pennsylvania Avenue? We stood here bipartisan in April as soon as he made that announcement and said, if you don't start getting people out right now, you are giving them a death sentence. If you pull our military assets out before you get Americans or allies out, you're consigning them to death, like this school principal and his family. Final thing, America is going to face Al-Qaeda 3.0. The intelligence community has been clear and has briefed us repeatedly. The Taliban taking over means Al-Qaeda 3.0 comes roaring back. Except now we're in a worse position than we were before 2001. We have no bases in the region. Our local allies are being hunted down as we speak. And as you've heard today, the Taliban are going to be armed to the teeth so that when future American soldiers have to go back in to deal with the problem and deal with the incompetence of this administration, how many are going to die now because they're going to have to fight their way through our own equipment, our own damn equipment, to deal with Al-Qaeda 3.0? Are we going to have another Pulse nightclub? Are we going to have another San Bernardino? Are we going to have another 9/11 because of that incompetence? Well, this Congress is going to lead.
This is why people despise politicians. Pelosi is telling you how to act, how to conduct your daily life, whether you can gather, worship, speak, do business. And yet she's out there speaking at a maskless fundraiser to protect her party and her speaker position, the same party that is failing to lead America right now. How could anyone have the gall to ask people to fund a party that is so obviously failing to lead? Do you realize that Pelosi is next in line to lead if something were to happen to Biden and Harris? That's how close she is to the presidency. She is totally against any sort of voter identification, but perfectly fine to demand a proof of vaccination, even though she said this earlier.
Perhaps when we are speaking would be a time we could, as you did, take down the mask. But so far, that's not what we can do. So here's the thing. We cannot require someone to be vaccinated. That's just not what we can do. It is a matter of privacy to know who is or who isn't. I can't go to the Capitol physician and say, give me the names of people who aren't vaccinated so I can go encourage them to, or make it known to others to encourage them to be vaccinated. So we can't do that.
That clip was from back in April. And look at where we are now. Mandates, privacy concerns galore. And I think the thing that is most important to remember is that she works for us, not the other way around. We pay her salary, and she's very rich, very rich. But I would never chastise someone for becoming wealthy, but she has profited from her position. Elle magazine did a nice little gush piece on Pelosi for how she coordinates her masks with her pantsuits. As Speaker, Pelosi has fined Republican members for not wearing masks. Yet we have seen multiple instances of her not following the same rules, whether getting her hair done in San Fran, walking through the East Room of the White House, hugging other lawmakers, or this latest fundraiser in Napa. It's a classic case of do as I say but not as I do. And that's a common theme with Congress. They are the ones that make the laws, but oftentimes they do not have to abide by those same laws. They are federal positions that have lots of perks. And it's probably why we will never see term limits. They were perfectly happy to pass Obamacare, knowing full well that their own insurance was already set in stone. Pelosi wants to create the Green New Deal and all of these environmental regulations, but she's flying every weekend to California. And understand that when I point out these hypocrisies by Pelosi, it's not like they're limited to one party or one person. We can all find them wherever we look. But I point to Pelosi because as the Speaker of the House, she has a unique position, and it gives the impression that she is above the law or above her own edicts, to find members without masks, but then to be seen multiple times without a mask in several settings. It just destroys any and all credibility. She doesn't walk the walk, she just talks the talk. And it's really bad optics to hold a high-dollar fundraiser when Afghanistan is turning into a Taliban paradise, while Americans are stranded there, thousands of them. It's such a dereliction of duty. If she really were a true leader, she would be directing the House to create legislation that would deal with the Taliban, arms, getting any hostages out, as well as preparing for any conflict and response. She was around the last time the Taliban were in power. So was Joe Biden. It's incredulous that these two people could sit back and watch this happen. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Pelosi traded barbs after Pelosi called him a moron for wanting to disobey her mask mandates. She, like many liberals, quoted "science, science, science" as the reason, even when it ran contrary to what the CDC was recommending at that time. McCarthy aptly noted that to Americans, this hypocrisy is what is so frustrating. To see businesses have to shut down, many of which never reopened, all while Pelosi goes out to get her hair cut indoors at a San Francisco salon. It's a tough pill to swallow. Actually, to see any gathering, especially a high-dollar one, while most people are not permitted to, is a tough pill to swallow. And I once again have to make the observation that constituents in California keep re-electing Nancy Pelosi. They keep re-electing Gavin Newsom. Well, I guess we will see if he survives the recall. Pelosi also was calling for the removal of Representative Matt Gaetz's committee positions if the sexual allegations against him proved to be true. Where was this same Nancy Pelosi when her own House member Eric Swalwell admitted to sexual relations with a known Chinese spy? I guess it only matters if you're a Republican. That's why most people, at least outside of Pelosi's district, have such little admiration and respect for members of Congress. They don't apply the same rules across the board. They want to issue edicts and laws without those laws being applied to themselves. Pelosi has proven time and time again that she is incapable of practicing what she preaches. Like I said before, crises expose bad leaders and bad leadership. The gall of holding a maskless fundraiser while Afghanistan turns over to Taliban rule and Americans are left behind is unconscionable. Political party should not matter right now. Leadership is what matters. Chastising and fining people for not wearing masks is part of a draconian state, particularly if you yourself are not abiding by such a mandate. Nancy Pelosi did everything she could to demean, to deride, and eventually impeach Donald Trump. She did nothing as China stole our intellectual property, gained on us, and made fools of us. Pelosi was flitting around in Chinatown in San Francisco without a mask on because she was so afraid of being labeled a xenophobe. What science was she following then? She made sure that she paved the way for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, an administration that has failed the world with respect to Afghanistan and has embarrassed the United States. Yet Pelosi has no shame. She holds a fundraiser to ensure her party stays in power. And that's the key word, power. It's not about making America a better place. It's about power. If it weren't, she wouldn't be holding a fundraiser. That's not why taxpayers pay her salary. They pay her to defend America, to embolden and empower America, to stabilize America, not to lay down like a scared little dog while the Taliban take over. While they take over $85 million worth of U.S. military equipment, Pelosi is presiding over a Congress with all the wrong priorities. Changing and federalizing voting methods and stripping voter ID, infrastructure, January 6th commissions. What is Pelosi doing? This is where we as citizens and voters have to stay attuned. We have to stay vigilant. Because if we aren't paying attention, we have ourselves to blame. She's not going to change. A leopard doesn't change its spots. Or should I say, a leopard pantsuit with a matching leopard mask doesn't change its spots. Joe Biden is exactly what we knew him to be. A bumbling, stumbling geriatric who is terrible at foreign policy. Pelosi hasn't changed either. She's been running the same game for years and years. She will continue to run the same deceptive game. And if you're a Californian in Pelosi's district, why do you put up with this madness? I don't care what political party Pelosi belongs to. It just so happens, well, she's a Democrat. But she's done a great disservice to all of us as a speaker. Continuous hypocrisy. A slap in the face to us all. And yet, Stephen Colbert still has her on his show to talk about gourmet ice cream in the middle of a pandemic. Elle magazine features an article about her matching outfits and masks. As Kevin McCarthy said, the Congress right now can pass a resolution with respect to this August 31st extraction deadline. The Taliban is already threatening us about this deadline. Any other resolution or bill to be debated needs to wait. Leadership requires that Congress deal with this right now more than anything else. It's too time sensitive and pressing. Pelosi should be focusing on this right this second. But we have seen where her head is. Napa fundraisers. That's unacceptable. Would this have happened with Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo? Absolutely not. Decisive action would have been taken, and Congress would have followed suit. But we have politicians asleep at the wheel, or asleep in a Napa bungalow, or asleep in the executive residence of the White House. Hypocrisy is bad because it exposes people for who they really are. If they were transparent and genuine, we wouldn't see the blatant hypocrisy. Such hypocrisy lets us know that they think that they are better than us, that they are above the law, above any reproach, above your ability to vote them out, above democratic ideals. It's hubris or pride. And it's also a statement of power, that they can do as they please because they wield the power and you don't. Hypocrisy has a few synonyms: sanctimony, piety. Do you see that when you see Nancy Pelosi? Do you see that when you see Gavin Newsom? Do you see this in California, a once great state? The greater question is, what are they doing for you? Are they serving you? Are they serving us? If not, whom are they serving? Or maybe in the case specifically of Pelosi, who is serving her? I bet it's that Napa fundraiser staff that had to wear masks. As with the case with all of my shows, I ask you for a moment of introspection. I hope that the people of California are watching this show. If you know someone in California, share this episode with them. See if they can open their eyes. I can sit here all day and share my analytics and my thoughts with you, but being proactive is just as important. I don't think everything needs fire and brimstone. Sometimes it can just be a shred of common sense. To ask yourself if the person you voted for is working like your best employee. Politicians tend to work more towards their own re-elections than for the people, because once they're voted in, they don't want to leave. They see everything as a photo op and a fundraiser. But more importantly, we should be asking ourselves, what are we getting out of the deal? Did we sign up for the Taliban to take back over a country that harbored the very terrorist who killed 2,000 people on 9/11? Next month, we will commemorate the 20-year anniversary of that awful tragedy. Could you have imagined in your wildest nightmare that this would happen a month before that? The Democrat Party is in control of the presidency and both chambers of Congress. They can pretty much do whatever they want, and they're hell-bent on doing it. But the question is, are you better off than you were 8 months ago? Are you happy the tweeting is more decent? Are you thrilled with the inflation, the gas prices, the foreign policy blunders? the border crisis, the fancy fundraisers while you're just still trying to make ends meet, the election engineering. In fact, what meaningful legislation has been passed since the beginning of this year that makes you proud and benefits you? I remember when Ted Cruz was seen with his family in Cancun while Texas was experiencing frigid temperatures. The New York Times and the Washington Post were all over his tail about this. Those were the top 2 articles in a Google search. But Pelosi's Napa fundraiser? Only New York Post, Daily Mail, and Fox. Why are the Times and the Washington Post asleep at the wheel? Listen to how Congressman Byron Donalds frames it.
Is that the Democrats live in the land of hypocrisy. They make all their rules for the American people, but they don't follow them. They tell the poor of America what needs to be done, but they don't actually do it themselves. So they love having Cristal on the table and getting jumbo lump crab and all that good stuff sitting without masks. But when it comes to the American people, like let's say in the city of New York, they're not allowed to go in a restaurant if they don't present their vaccine card. This is the height of hypocrisy. This is why they have no credibility. And that's why the American people are over it. They're done. They're finished. They just want to live their lives like the way basically Nancy Pelosi's living hers.
And take a look at what Chuck Schumer and Stephen Colbert were doing recently. This is cute. Colbert always there, cozying up to his favorite Democrat. So these are the stakes. This is the hypocrisy. Are you cool with it? If not, do something about it. I'm Beau, and that's the show.